Michael Andretti has fired back at his Formula One critics. It gets spicy. Let's talk about it. So Michael Andretti has been the name perhaps most uttered in the world of motorsports in this very early 2023 year. And he had some choice words in light of a lot of negative press around the Andretti Cadillac announcement. Now, Michael Andretti spoke with Bruce Martin of Forbes magazine in an article today. It's well worth the read, and it is linked in the description for you to read at your leisure. So here's the shots that Michael Andretti fired in the current war of words in the Formula One media. It's all about money, Michael said. First, they think they're going to get diluted 1/10 of their prize money, but they also get very greedy, thinking we will take all of the American sponsors as well. Shots fired. It's all about greed and looking at themselves and not looking at what is best for the overall growth of the series. What is also interesting is that Michael denied that Zach Brown had turned coat against him. This quote is very interesting. Zach wants to do whatever he can do to help us get there, and so is Alpine as well. Of course, we've known about Alpine for quite a while at this point. Zach Brown and Alpine are two very good allies. Zach has been very supportive. The other interesting nugget from this article that I found very interesting is the fact that Michael claims that Cadillac will prepare its own engine in 2026, but the goal for the Andretti Formula One effort is to be on the grid by 2025, which is why everyone has been talking about this badging effort that I guess has been going around. And obviously we know that Renault has agreed to supply them an engine when and if they need it. So logically, it would stand to reason that if Cadillac's building their own power plant in 2026, that Renault would power the team in an interim year in 2025. But yeah, the spice, of course, is the greed parts of those quotes. Greed and egos. That's a big part of racing, not just Formula One. And it's something I touched on at the end of yesterday's video when I was talking about the Formula One team owners. And I knew that this was going to be a bit of a pitfall for Michael Andretti and the Andretti Formula One effort. Because if you bruise the egos of those at the top of racing, they are going to make life very difficult for you. And this might be a miscalculation on Michael Andretti's part to go after some of the critics as harshly as he is. And I say might because I think now that it has come to light, at least according to Michael Andretti, that Cadillac will be preparing its own engine for the 2026 regs, that may give him more leverage to be a bit more spicy with his commentary than he otherwise would have been in the past, where he was really at the mercy of the teams. He still kind of is at the mercy of the teams, but he's got to get the approval of the FIA first before it goes to the teams. And I think at some point, the FIA is going to try to twist some arms within the teams or within the resistance the teams are showing right now, because like I keep saying, they meaning the teams, have signed a Concord agreement that says there can be as many as 13 teams on the grid. We know that the FIA president wants Formula One to have more than 10 teams. He specifically mentioned 12 teams, not quite up to the maximum that the Concord agreement allows for of 13, but he's mentioned 12. And you would definitely think that if Andretti Autosport is bringing a new manufacturer, and a manufacturer that's willing to build a power plant, or at least pay for someone else to build the power plant that they then slap a Cadillac logo on, versus just doing a badging exercise, which we've seen a couple of times mentioned. I know I've mentioned it because that seemingly is the direction that this was going to go. And if they do get to the grid in 2025, that's what it will have to be, is a Cadillac logo on the side of the cowling, but ultimately a Renault power plant underneath. Now, in Formula One, as I mentioned yesterday, that's not exactly unheard of. Renault engines have been badged as virtually everything. I think they've been badged as Acers before. They've been badged as Tag Heuers. They've been badged as Playlifes. They've been badged as Supertechs. There's so many different ways you can badge a Renault engine. Badging one as a Cadillac isn't that far outside of the realm of sanity. There's no doubt about that. It would be a bit strange to have a French Formula One motor being badged by big, heavy Chevy GM. But the fact that Cadillac is willing to build their own engine, that has to be what the FIA sees in this Andretti Autosport entry in Formula One. Because if they're not building the engine, like I said yesterday, the badging exercise, I do agree with the criticism of. I think it's silly to badge a Renault engine as a Tag Heuer. I think it's silly to badge it as a Cadillac. I think it's silly to badge it as a Playlife because it's a Renault. Like, call it a Renault, right? And if you didn't build the motor, why are you putting your name on it? Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin. That's what I see on the engine side. And I think that's what the FIA has to see. And that's probably why Michael feels that he has the ability to be a little bit more spicy than we otherwise would have expected someone who has to grovel to Ferrari and to Toto Wolff at Mercedes and to Christian Horner at Red Bull. If you're coming in with General Motors and they're going to throw their full support behind your program, there isn't much I think the teams are going to be able to do at the end of the day. That is too valuable to Formula One to pass up, and that is the standard that they continue to set for Michael Andretti to hurdle over, and he keeps hurdling over those larger and larger hurdles. What are they going to tell him to do next? I don't know. The biggest thing I take away from this article, and the lead was kind of buried, and I keep talking about it because I think it's really important. Cadillac building their own engine. That has major implications. Even if they're just funding, let's say, Ilmore, or let's go really out on a limb. Let's say Hendrick Motorsports builds this Formula One engine for Chevrolet. But GM, I think I said Chevrolet, General Motors, funding the bill for Cadillac to go Formula One racing in whatever capacity that is. But especially if there's General Motors technology and money behind it, that's a significant budget increase. And when we're looking at the motorsport landscape going forward, you have to look at the other series that General Motors is involved in. The minute they get the green light for this program, there's going to be a massive amount of funds dedicated to that particular program. Funds that may otherwise be allocated in other series currently. That's the truth of the matter. And there's a reason why they had to specifically state, yes, we're committed to IMSA. Yes, we're committed to IndyCar. Because I think there's a paradigm shift coming, especially if this deal gets done, especially if Cadillac is building their own engine. It's going to be crazy. And I would be very curious to see what kind of marketing goes behind this effort. Is GM going to throw their full weight behind it? You know, I've been watching Brock Beard's amazing documentary on the 2001 NASCAR season. And one of the things that kind of brought NASCAR to the next level was the absolutely bonkers amount of promotion that Dodge did when they entered NASCAR or re-entered NASCAR in 2001. Now, I wouldn't say to necessarily expect that from Cadillac, but I'm saying, is it outside of the realm of possibility, especially if Formula One continues to grow, particularly in the homeland here in the United States? A U.S. team, more than likely a U.S. driver in Colton Herta, who has some name recognition here. He's not as mainstream as probably Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton are here, as strange as that is to say. And you've got an American team with a name that I think a lot of Americans do recognize in Andretti. And if they start coming into Formula One and really setting the world on fire, who knows, man? Who knows? I think this is This story has very long legs, and it's very interesting to see where it's going. I'm very curious to see how this plays out over the next years and months. So thank you guys so much for watching. You've already let me know. I keep asking that, and then there's 800 comments in 24 hours. You guys have already let me know down in the comments, but I'll say it anyway. While you're down there, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.